Alright, so RPE training, what is it? How can we use it? And from there, how can we progress from it? So RPE is becoming very popular now within powerlifters. What it stands for, RPE, is rate of perceived exertion. Basically how hard you're working in a given set. So usually the scale is from 1 to 10. 1 being you had 9 reps left in the tank, 10 being it was an absolute max out set. So basically the RPE scale dictates how much reps you had left in the tank. And for example, if you were prescribed to do a set of 5 at a 5 RPE, basically you'd be using a weight that you'd be using for sets of 10, but you'd only be performing 5 reps. So you'd be leaving 5 reps in the tank. You'd only be performing 5 reps and leaving 5 that you don't do, and that would be considered about RPE 5. Usually you'll only see people use up to around a 5 or a 6 is the lowest people will go. Even using a 5 is sometimes really hard to gauge what really is an RPE 5. Anything lower than that, it'd be almost too hard to really gauge what exactly is less than a 5. Being that 5 itself is already hard to kind of gauge. So people will use that as a form of auto-regulation. Depending on how you feel that day, good or bad, you can auto-regulate the weight, meaning you can switch the weight that you're using for that day to put the right amount of weight on the bar, so you can actually progress and not hurt yourself in the long run. Because as we know with percentages, sometimes we might be prescribed, for example, an 80, we'll be prescribed a 5x5 at 80%. And for some reason, environment, different factors from life, not eating enough, not drinking enough water, not enough sleep, that all messes us up. So when we come into train, when we do that 5x5 with 80%, usually a weight we can hit easily, we only are able to hit 3 reps. And now you're left thinking, well, am I not strong enough? Am I not ready for this? And the answer isn't that you aren't strong enough or you're not ready. It's just sometimes those outside factors outside of the gym, you're eating, you're sleeping, your hydration levels, that can play a role in how your training goes. So if we take that same example of 5x5, but now we change it to an RPE of 7 to 8, keep it at 7, leaving basically 3 reps in the tank. So if we take a 5x5, and if we're prescribed an RPE 7, which means we can do 3 reps additional without performing them, of course. So that means basically you're using a weight that you can do easily for 8 reps, but you're only performing 5 and leaving 3 in the tank to match that RPE of 7. And that goes for whatever weight you're doing. If you have a 10, sets of 10 at an RPE of 8 to make it easy, that leaves 2 reps in the tank. So that means you're using a weight that you could usually do for 12 reps, but you're only performing 10. So that's usually how they'll apply it with RPE training. Usually the progression from week to week will be almost in a linear fashion, either doing increments of half an RPE, which I'll explain as well, or a full RPE from a 7 to an 8, or a 7.5 to an 8, or an 8 to an 8.5. And with those, I will put a link to a chart that you guys can use and add to your templates of training to implement RPE training into your program, because there are percentages that are ranges for that RPE. So for a single, I know off the top of my head, for an RPE 8, usually that's around 92%. At a 9, usually 96 to 98-ish percent of your max. But yeah, so I'll be putting that down in the link so that you guys can use that as a tool, as well as, well, we'll go into the half So if you're prescribed something at a 7.5, for example, that means you can get 2 reps for sure, and maybe the third. So in the chart that I'll put here, it kind of goes over. At a 7, definitely you can do 3 more reps. At a 7.5, it's maybe, and then at 8, it's definitely 2 reps. So those halves are kind of to help people. You may not know if you have 3 exactly, but you don't know that 2 is the definite amount of number that you can only hit. So that kind of midway point kind of saves people a little bit, and saying that maybe they can get 3 more, but 2 definitely is in the tank. So that's kind of a way to meet that person, midway. So that's a little spurt on RPE training, what it is, how it's applied. And I also listed below a link to a chart of RPE that you can use. If you have any more questions, you can leave them down in the comment below, and I'll do some more videos on this if you're interested. Also, I'll put a link down to my Instagram where I do post daily training, and I'll go over RPE training, and I'll go over my RPEs that I'm using in my training. So give the video a like if you did. See you next time.